Do you get excited when you find something that links something else, or that you've been pondering and questioning and just kind of waiting for it all to come together so that you have a better understanding? I have had that today. So in all of the videos that I've created, and when I first started, of receiving these intuitive messages and pulls and this conscious awakening that just would not let go. And once it started, there was no going back. There was absolutely zero way that I could continue to exist in my prior life in the way that I had lived before. The little things that would come up, and the images and the photographs that I would take of the sky and the clouds, and seeing actual pictures in the sky. And I would write about this feverishly for, well, I still write about it, but early days, it was like having to force myself to put the pen down. And what I kept talking about was how it appeared to me to be these faces that were pressing in, looking at what was happening in this space, on Earth, this realm, this timeline, dimension, however you want to look at it, but looking in, because these faces and images were so clear. And I kept writing and thinking that it was the bottom of an ocean, that it was the bottom of an ocean, so the sky being that, and that they were looking in on this realm and giving us signs and signals and messages, helping to direct us, to warn us, to guide us. And that people were so busy looking down at their phone, they weren't even noticing how amazing what was above, right over their heads. And this crazy experience that I continued to have about the fact that I was this seventh trumpet, which is a religious, I don't want to say construct, but it's in the Bible, the Christian Bible, and I'm not religious. Spiritual, yes. Curious, soulful, believe in energy, believe in consciousness, all that is 100%, that there's a source from where we come as energy, and that we continue to exist after we have shifted through this body. And that we project our experiences. And so my projection is noticing, ever since I was a child, noticing the sky, noticing the images, and talking about them and sharing them. But in the past, since I've started this channel, I've shared it publicly in all my videos. The things that I see, things I see in the trees, in the grass, rocks, sky, and how I have connected them back to having meaning. Well, today was a new piece to that puzzle. Learning that there's actually a term that's repeatedly used in the Bible, which gets, again, interpreted by so many people and used for so many different purposes. I believe it's code. It's a code book. And that you can believe anything anyone says or anything you see and use it through your own perspective and experience, because it's your projection. The thing that came up today when someone actually had mentioned it to me, it came up in regards to weather and why it's so strange. The weather has been so strange. And my soul sister and I have been talking about, which I mentioned before, how you can see the sun and the moon at the same time, which I never remember being able to do when I was young. I remember that the sun was up in the day and the moon was up at night. And now I've recorded so many times where you see both. You can record both. Middle of the day, you can still see the moon. And we've laughed and we've pondered and questioned, well, how that is. And the idea that the sky is a mist, it's a globe or a dome over what we would call Earth, and that it's actually the bottom of an ocean, just has struck me as so fascinating that I wrote about this probably 2 years ago now. And that was my belief, is that these images, and I still believe, are being shared for a purpose, for a reason. And so my goal and my plan over the next however long is to learn more about this so that I can connect more of the dots from my initial experiences of being somehow tied to this end of times apocalyptic storyline that has been in the Bible, which I believe there is so much more to it, and how it relates to the images that I continue to capture and to share. So I hope that you come along this journey with me as I dig in and try to understand a bit more from a spiritual perspective, rather than a religious dogma or doctrine where you are forced to believe something in one way. Just to be open, to be curious, and to really hope to get a different picture of what it all could possibly mean. Hi, and welcome back. It is March 13th, 2026, and it's snowing up on the hills here in the high mountain passes of British Columbia. There's been crazy amounts of snow and ice and high winds that were strong enough to flip over semi-trucks, which is just crazy. It just goes to show the intensity of everything that is happening around the globe, the weather included. And it's so funny because I am learning so much more than I ever was planning on with respect to these different shifts and changes in energy. When I first started this journey of connecting the dots and really leaning into my intuitive nudges, I wondered why so many of the messages were really, to me, felt religious because God and the Bible was part of religions, not spiritual, not connected in any way to a soul, but to doctrine and dogma and you need to do this to be saved. You need to believe that to be worthy. And that's not how I was raised or in line with my beliefs. My beliefs that, again, like I've spoken about earlier, there being a central source creating all that is, doesn't then come back and say, you, and you, but not you. I can't see that. That doesn't make any sense to me. And so with this weather and my taking pictures and seeing all these images in the clouds, and I've done this my whole life of noticing things and seeing faces in the trees or images in the grass or seeing just anywhere, connecting the dots, the patterns, the synchronicities, the symbols and signs, and them connecting to something that I'm either working on or thinking about, which helps to clarify something and take you to another level. And so leaning into that and really recognizing that there's so much more available to us to really expand our awareness and our experiences beyond what we are led to believe and forced to believe in many cases, because the repercussions and the consequences are very serious if you don't, and especially if you are a woman or a minority. And so this weather and these images and connecting all the dots has led me down a path I was not expecting to go, that caused me to pause and to really reflect on some things and allow information to come in as it is meant to come in, rather than push, which we're taught to do, right? Push through, just double down. If something's not working, find a different way. Instead of just pause and let things come as they're meant to come to you. And so today, in speaking with my soul sister, and we were talking again about the weather and how funny it is that London and Kamloops across the globe have had such different weather patterns in the past. And now we are matching up, and oftentimes her weather is much nicer than mine. And we just think that it's so interesting how this shift continues. And she sent me a link today, and she was talking about firmament. And I had not heard of this. I had not really dug into it. And it was connected to weather and how it relates to a deeper understanding of the world that we live in. And so I briefly looked it up, and firmament is in the Bible, and it's spoken about many different times, apparently. And it's also across all cultures, it shows up in different forms, repeated, that there is the cloud cover, like a mist, like a sphere over the earth. And forgive me because I'm not an expert in this, and so something is clicking here. And it's connected, I guess, to there being 3 levels in some cultures. I'm not too sure. And that this is basically holding back water, another level of what has been identified as the heavens, but it's holding back the water. And apparently that this is also something that was released when Noah built the ark and the great flood. All of these things are connected. Again, please forgive me. I am no expert. But the reason why it's connecting for me is I wrote about these things when I had first started journaling and really connecting to this call and pull. And you could say I was in the middle of a midlife crisis, a breakthrough, a breakdown, a post-traumatic stress, complex post-traumatic stress disorder shift, whatever you want to call it. But this enlightenment came, where you see beyond the box, even more than you ever had before. And I was writing about how all the images that I have recorded and continue to record, and all of the things that I have seen over the course of my life, that I felt as though the sky, the images were often pressing their faces through. And I kept saying, it feels like the bottom of an ocean. The bottom of an ocean looking down at us here on whatever realm, earth you want to call this, and watching us. And many times it feels like warnings. Sometimes it feels like you're seeing into the future of an outcome. It's whatever you are connecting to is obviously how you are seeing something, to help you move through that consciousness, through that awareness, to then discover a deeper meaning, even more pertinent than maybe you originally thought. So this firmament in the Bible that is spoken about by Daniel, who again was one of my first connections when I started writing, and about being the 7th trumpet, about end times, and then seeing the horses, the 4 horsemen, and recording that, and seeing the angels in the sky, and seeing and having the revelations of the angels ascending. All of these things are oddly coming together and connecting the dots. And I felt as though I needed to share this piece, because I actually feel really inspired by this connection, that finally there are some connective parts to my spiritual awakening, my reconnection, my remembering, my channeling. Again, those are only words. My experience is my experience. When we talk about the firmament in the old scriptures, we're really talking about a boundary, that thin, shimmering line between what we think we know and what's waiting just beyond our ordinary sight. In the ancient world, it was imagined as a dome, a great expanse separating the waters above from the waters below. But symbolically, it's always been the veil between the human mind and the deeper, truer reality behind it. The book of Daniel lives right at that threshold. His visions aren't just predictions of kingdoms rising and falling. They're moments when the veil lifts, when the firmament cracks open just enough for a human being to glimpse something vast. And near the end of the book, there's that line about a time when knowledge shall increase. Many people today hear that not as a warning of catastrophe, but as a hint, a whisper, that there will come a moment when awareness expands, when consciousness wakes up to itself. In that light, the end times stop being about destruction. They become a metaphor for the end of smallness, the end of seeing the world through a narrow slit, the end of being asleep. So the connection is simple and beautiful. The firmament is the veil. Daniel is the one who sees through it. And the end times are not the end of the world, but the end of forgetting who we are. It's the moment when the sky inside us opens and we begin to truly live. Thanks for watching, everyone, for liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing, and most of all for being here, having these conversations and being willing to expand our awareness, to not dismiss or judge in a way that makes someone feel lesser, for really going on a spiritual journey of soulful understanding that we're energy and that we're here for a reason, and that the more that we connect authentically, the more that we will begin to understand and connect the dots. And then hopefully something will come of that will release the pressure of this pressure cooker that we are in right now. We can only hope and we can only try. So until next time, stay safe, stay connected, and we'll see you really soon. Bye.